Pope Francis has harshly criticised Europe for what he says is the exploitation of migrants for political purposes. The Pontiff was speaking during his visit to a migrant camp on the Greek island of Lesbos. The island is a main entry point for migrants from Africa and the Middle East seeking asylum in Europe.
A warm welcome for the Pontiff as he greets hundreds of migrants here on Lesbos. He condemned the situation on the island, calling it a shipwreck of civilization.
With deep regret, we must admit that this country, like others, continues to be hard-pressed, and that in Europe there are those who persist in treating the problem as if it doesn't concern them. This is tragic.
He criticised the global attitude towards and treatment of asylum seekers.
It's easy to stir up public opinion by instilling fear of others. Yet why do we fail to speak up about the exploitation of the poor? The remote causes of migration should be attacked, not the poor people who pay the consequences and are even used for political propaganda.
Just over 2,000 migrants live in the camps here, a fraction of the numbers that crowded the island just 2 years ago. But still, there is little shelter from the cold and strict restrictions on people's movements. The Pope's visit sparks hope for those enduring these bleak conditions.
And he came to visit us, and not only like hearing it from far, but he came to the field to see how we live, to see how things happen here. So it gives us hope and strength, knowing that such a leader thinking about us and coming to visit us.
Pope Francis has consistently warned countries against turning their backs on migrants and ignoring their plight. Those here on Lesbos are hoping his message might finally now be heard.
And in recent months, the shortfalls of EU's border policy have been brought sharply into focus by Belarus. That's where thousands of migrants have arrived, hoping to cross into EU member Poland. Brussels says the Belarusian government created the crisis by alluring the migrants with false promises. But some say Poland and the EU are ignoring human suffering. DW's Alexandra von Nahmen reports.
Searching deep in the forest for people in need of help, as temperatures drop well below freezing by night. A resident from a local village brought us to a spot just outside the exclusion zone where migrants were camping earlier that day.
People are dying. Bodies are being found in the forest. But nobody talks about that. Not long ago, a friend saw a body by the side of the road.
He says he's ashamed and angry with the way the government has been handling the situation. A storehouse a few kilometers away. Beata is one of many volunteers trying to help. She tells me the migrants she meets in the woods have been pushed back into Belarus multiple times.
They want to warm up, at least for a moment. They want to shave, wash themselves. They ask us whether there's a house where they can hide or sleep for a bit. Unfortunately, we cannot give them that.
Beata is particularly disappointed with the role the European Union is playing in this crisis.
My impression is that the European Union supports Poland by giving them their blessing for breaking international law. We do have asylum rules that are quite clear. They don't need to be reinvented.
But that's what's been happening in Poland. The government changed the law to legalize pushbacks. Officials argue the current situation requires changes to long-standing practices.
The international asylum regulations, and in particular the Geneva Convention, were written in the 1950s, long before we had to deal with what Alexander Lukashenko is doing. To
fend off criticism, authorities have promised more transparency. Although they formally lifted the state of emergency last week, restrictions remain in place. No one without a special permit is allowed to access the area. The situation at the Polish border with Belarus seems to have calmed down a bit in recent days. Apparently, the number of migrants in the area has decreased, at least for now. But the border zone stays off limits for visitors, including journalists, with security forces on high alert. Authorities don't seem to be willing to open up the area anytime soon, even though humanitarian organizations are raising the alarm as conditions in the woods get worse every day.